On today's show, we wrap up our week of foretelling the future with a look at astrology.
For a person, of course, it's easy. We look at the date, time, and place of birth.
So stick around. That is our song of the day today, called You're in Luck by Slow Runner. Well, all this week we have been trying to decipher the mysteries of luck and fate here on the show. It's been a week of soothsaying, palm reading, fortune telling. Our camera person, George Lagajanis, has been our willing and gracious guinea pig. He has had the configuration of his tea leaves read. He's had his numbers crunched by a numerologist. A palmist has studied the lines on his gnarly cameraman's hands, and he's had his tarot cards read. And today, even as we speak, an astrologist is poring over George's star charts. So if it is possible to know what one's future holds, George knows he should. We're going to find out more about that, and then we will wrap up our fortune-telling week and see how these peeks into the future affect us in the present. All that is coming up.
I take my wisdom anywhere I can get it.
George and I look back at reading his future.
I really do have a belief that that these people can sense something through some vibration, but it's really up to me.
Hey, baby, what's your sign? Yeah, thanks to guys in shiny shirts undone to, oh, the navel, wearing gold chains and approaching women in bars with lines like that, astrology has gotten something of a bad rap. But it is an ancient art that has had many followers throughout history, from Isaac Newton to Copernicus, Galileo, Carl Jung. Today, as part of our week of forecasting the future, our cameraman George Lagajanis has graciously submitted to having his astrological charts read, and he is here with me now to talk about what is in the stars for him, along with astrologist Hassan Jaffer. Welcome, you guys. Welcome back to George. Hassan, let me ask you, how did you get interested in astrology?
Well, you know, I'm an engineer by profession, actually.
An engineer?
Yes, for 25 years I was a consulting engineer, actually, but I lost my mother when I was born. And that's the reason I always used to feel that, and on my birthday, everyone used to get together and cry that he's the one who killed her. But I used to feel very special, that if God had to deny me something so precious as the mother's love, I must be somebody very special. So I had this understanding, but now when I look at my chart, it's impossible for my mother to have been there, because everything led me to that. Like I have 15,000 clients around the world. We have more than 6 kings and queens for my clients, for example. But there are two ways.
You have 15,000 clients around the world?
More than that, probably. Those are the ones we have records of, yes. Wow. And we've done charts much more than that. We don't have the information for. The main thing is, see, there are 2 ways of understanding the divine truth, what I call. One is a conscious awareness of truth. One is a conscious awareness of truth. In my chart, I'm born with both of them. Luckily,
sorry, I didn't understand the difference. One way of understanding divine truth is what?
It's a conscious awareness of truth. Like, for example, there's no concept of stillness in nature. This got neutrons, protons buzzing around it. The whole Earth is moving. The whole galaxies are moving. I can say it and you can understand it. Or H2O is water. It's not like scientific research which keeps changing every week. There are certain fundamental laws of nature.
Fundamental truths that will always be
right.
the case scientifically.
There's another aspect of subconscious awareness of truth. When you have, for example, when you have prophetic dreams.
Yes.
Or the minute you start talking, you can tell something about that.
Yes.
Or if you play, somebody's really angry and you start playing minor chords and the person becomes much more mellow, for example. These are subconscious. Luckily, I was born with both of these aspects, but I wouldn't have had it had my mother been living.
Are we not all born with both of those? No. The ability to feel comfortable with both?
These are the 2 of the most powerful aspects anybody could have. The problem is, you see, many people are born with a negative aspect of this, and those are the dictators. Whether you take Reagan, you take Boris Yeltsin, you take Mao Zedong, even Chrétien. Chrétien's chart is exactly opposite to America, and he was the only one who stood up against Iraq, because his chart is exactly opposite to the United States chart. Within the United States, there's just destruction and this dictatorial aspect.
Okay, let me back up for a second. You talk about charts. What is an astrological chart, and how do you determine Chrétien's and America's and mine and George's?
Well, we look at, for a person, of course, it's easy. We look at the date, time, and place of birth, and we look at all the planetary positions where the planets are. Like in your case,
the planets are in position at the time of your birth.
That's right. And you see, like when you were born, for example, you were born under the sign of Taurus, as you know.
I'm a Taurus, yes.
But Mercury was in the sign of Aries. So now Shakespeare was born with exactly the same aspect. He was a Taurus with Mercury in Aries.
April 23rd.
That's it. And instead of writing one big novel, he wrote a lot of short stories. So you're impatient, you're impulsive, and you want something, you want it right away.
Yeah, that's
in fact, the school system...
Especially when I'm pregnant. Woo!
And the school,
you should ask my husband about that.
The school system is not made for people like you. It was made for people who do all their homework, all the boring things. Like if you were a man, you definitely would be like a double ADD with this aspect.
Oh, really? Okay.
And you think like a man, by the way. Coming from me, it's a compliment. Like you're confident, you're action-oriented. But in love matters, your chart actually reminds me of Casanova and the Geisha girls, the arts of love. If it wasn't for Saturn being so close to Venus, it wouldn't be as loyal either, because you are extremely idealistic in love matters. That's why I said you have a very rare chart. It's almost an Eastern chart when it comes to sacrifice and love and that. But in terms of mind, you're very Western.
So how does the fact that Venus was aspecting whatever you said, I'm sorry, I can't remember, Mars,
yes.
when I was born.
Yes.
What does that mean? And how, and you know, and let's talk about George too, because
sure.
how do where the planets were during his time of birth create who he is?
Well, the things, you know, like nobody has been able to find out what the correction, the correlation is. I personally feel as an engineer that the Earth's field is induced, the magnetic field. The geomagnetism is constantly changing. So when you were born...
As the objects move through the solar system?
Constantly. And we know that. They've been able to have sort of the prediction of the weather. It's a very well-known aspect. In RCA, there were some engineers who did that also. And so how much energy that it takes for chromosome crossover? Like you can't even see this zygote, you know, when you were born. Like before you were born, I mean, those cells. So I have a feeling it has to do with the magnetic field and what you represent. And then as it's changing, how that is changing with it.
We are stardust, we are golden, and we've got to get back to the garden.
But you know, Jill, what I found...
Get ourselves back to the garden.
You know, what I found that there are three things we can predict. And even for Prophet is not immune for this aspect. If I was Prophet Abraham's astrologer, and if I said, Prophet Abraham, you will sacrifice your son, I'd be 100% wrong. But if I said, Prophet Abraham, you'll go through the experience of sacrificing your son, when it'll happen, and how long will it last, all three things, I'd be 100% correct. Because there was no difference between sacrificing a son or the goat. But this is a metaphor and not this matter. Nobody can predict the action. I wrote about Princess Diana 45 days before it happened that she had to be careful of freak actions to head and spine.
Did you tell her that?
I couldn't get to that.
Famous clients?
That's the only reason why I'm on these shows, because I don't care for publicity or anybody's opinion or anything. I could become a total recluse, but only so that I could make a difference in the life of the masses. That's why I even come on the television.
So, okay, let's have a look at what you talked to George about, and then I'll ask you some more
thinks
things.
more like a woman, and that also I'm saying in a complimentary way. He's
hey,
a
well,
very,
we should get together. I think like a man, you think like a woman.
He reminds me of Ann Landers. It's like a real caring mother, nurturing, not only that, but even in cooking. Like he'd be fantastic, like it'll taste so well, and he loves good food. I was telling him he should really have meetings in a restaurant, because that'll be the luckiest place for him. Natalie Portman, who has Venus and Cancer like him, was actually discovered in a pizza parlor.
Let's take a look at the clip of when you two were together.
You have a deep respect for tradition and culture and history and old things. It's like a sentimental pack rat. That's this aspect.
Yeah.
Because your child reminds me of the children and the barbecue and the home and all these aspects. That's all that
I do love that.
How did what Hassan has told you make sense to you?
He nailed that also. Not just my love of eating, but to cook and prepare food for people has always been something that for me opened just about every door in my life has been open through it. I mean, and
it really has an incredible chart. Like, you know, Princess Diana, Nicole Kidman, and George, all three of them have exactly the same aspect, Mercury Neptune aspect.
You're destined for the magazine pages, baby.
But this is not the famous aspect. I'm talking about the caring for the masses, the humanitarian aspect. Like even for Diana's, all the charity is still working.
Last question before we let you go. I mean, we could talk for hours, I guess. But when people look at their horoscope in the newspaper, you know, how capable is one little paragraph of distilling all this? Wow, it's like a math test. All this.
Accurate.
They're so accurate?
No, I'm joking.
No. How much stock should you put in your morning horoscope?
I guess it keeps astrology in vogue. So many people can see. And maybe there's some synchronicity, like tarot cards and all that based on synchronicity. You ask a question and the heavens hold the answer. So you pick up the question, even if it's random, maybe some synchronicity to it, you know. That's very, very different.
Right. Interesting.
My new book will be coming out, by the way, in about 2 weeks' time. There with the printer. It makes you an astrologer in 5 minutes, and it's exactly made for people like you. By the way, one thing which if you look at your hand, you have long analytical fingers, but your brain line is totally separate from lifeline. These are the people who are action-oriented, who break the rules, Oprah is born with that. Bill Clinton is born with that. And
because of this space between my... You know,
completely
it's funny, the
separate.
palm reader told us
Absolutely.
that yesterday. It means that I'm a rule breaker.
That's right, yes. But also it gives you more confidence and much more action-oriented. These are the leaders of the society also.
I do like to break the rules, but I have to listen when they tell me that we're out of time. Thank you for talking with us today, Hassan. And George is going to stick around because I predict we're going to sit with George and review all the fortunes that he has received this week and deconstruct them all in just a moment when we come back. That was You're in Luck by Slow Runner. Now, before the break, George Lagagenis was seeing what sort of luck might be in the stars for him according to his astrological charts. And all this week, he's also had his fortune told by a palmist, by a tassologist, which is a tea leaf reader to you and me, by a tarot card reader, and a numerologist. If George knows one thing, he knows them all about his past, his present, his future. George is here with me now to look back at all this looking into the future that he's been doing in the recent past. I'm curious why you volunteered to do this.
Well, why not? You know,
Yeah?
I have. First of all, it's a real privilege to be able to have professionals come and sort of give you a look inside, help you go inside,
Yeah.
and find some answers. Were
you skeptical at all?
Well, I've always been a bit of a skeptic, but as we just talked about earlier, a little bit as you get older, you know, you get to midlife, I'm a little softer in my take on the world, and you know, I've been a bit of a spirit seeker, really. When I look at my history, I've always been I've been very much looking for answers, to the deeper questions. And one thing I always have believed is that we really haven't even begun to tap into the potential, the healing potential of all kinds of things: music, color, numbers.
Right.
It's all there for us. We just haven't quite gotten to the level of consciousness evolution yet.
That's why I think you were an interesting choice to do this, because, and we talked about this with one, I can't remember with which one of these fortune tellers, about how in some ways you have to, I would have thought that you had to be, well, first of all, emotionally in touch, connected with yourself, open to those ideas, but also aware of your own sort of thought processes and analysis of yourself and your feelings and your actions and your past. And you are very open to that. I think, just from conversations we've had working together, much more so than a lot of people. A lot of people live more in a, no, I don't want to get too deep right now because that might get uncomfortable. You're not like that.
No, well, a couple of years ago, maybe 5 years ago, I may not have been. I probably wouldn't have been, to be honest with you.
So this is an interesting time for you to do
yeah,
it.
because I mean, I had some adversity in life, and it kind of introduced me to myself, you know, and pain, as they say, can be a great teacher.
Right.
And I went through some rough times in terms of relationship and some family death and a complete career change. It took me from being, because I was also someone that was, by the way, really interested in outer space and, you know, looking beyond, and much more interested in inner space now, and reconciling this first and connecting this and this before I start sending it out to the rest of the world.
Okay, well, we want to have a little look back and sort of recap all the things that you've been told, because this is this was part of this exercise, was to do a bit of look at the last the astrologist Hassan, who we spoke with today.
Probably as a youngster, you may have liked older women more, or very mature type of women.
I'm sorry, when I...
Like older women or very mature type of women.
When I was younger, or...
Yeah.
or
normally you attract the mature type of women. That's part of that Venus-Saturn aspect in the chart. But 2003 and 4, actually 2004 and 5 were definitely major testing period for relationships. And 2006 would have been excellent, actually.
Okay, here's what I want to ask you, because all these people sound like they're so convinced that they're right. I guarantee you 100% you haven't met the right woman yet. So do you think that this whole exercise, having your fortune told 5 times in your case, do you think that it will affect the way that you operate when you're out dating? Do you think it's going to stay with you as you're meeting people?
Well, do
you think that it should?
Again, I think it introduces us to, it's introduced me to some interesting ways to look at how I handle myself. But but I really do believe, because I'm someone who does have a spiritual center. I've come through some rough time, and I do have a spiritual side now and I believe it works through people. You know, it's not something in the ether. I'm much more temporal that way. I believe that we're all connected, and that I'm just interested in getting to know people first, and just not jump into, you know, very sort of
So some of this might confirm
things.
that then, in terms of your approach to dating
it confirms
now.
To me what kind of person I am, but I haven't really been honest with myself in the past about that. I've tended to get involved with people. Now he's someone who, after off camera, Hassan, when we were talking, and he said I didn't want to do this when the cameras were rolling. He asked for birth dates of my ex,
yes,
and my ex prior to that, and he really read them in detail in terms of what kind of people they were and what kind of relation. You know, I don't want to take other people's inventory here, but it was that was as spooky as anything I've gotten, and told me what kind of person I've been attracted to, and maybe that's not the healthiest thing for me. So, hey, look, after going through some of the stuff I take my wisdom anywhere I can get it. So I'm much more a believer, believing is seeing as opposed to just seeing is believing.
What is your advice, having done it 5 different ways now, as to whether it is a good thing to? Is it just something to do for fun? Well, can it be really helpful to get your fortune told?
That's hard. That's everyone's personal take. But I mean, if you're honest, if you're at a place in your life where you're just being more honest with yourself, you're interested in a little bit more self-love, open and willing, you're likely to get a lot out of this. Because if you took all 5 of the readings that I had done over this past week, which I'm going to be doing when I get the full 15-20 minutes of them, and really lay them over top of each other, they really do line up in many important ways. And not just the kind of stuff, because as a skeptic in me would have thought, you know, these people could have all just Googled me before the show, before they come on, and there's a certain number of things they can find out when it comes to career or that kind of thing. But none of them could have possibly known about my romantic past, and to get things as close as it is. I'm very much a believer that there's a lot. Here's the thing. I don't think that our intelligence, there's a lot of hubris. I think we tend to give ourselves a lot of credit as a species for being that this intelligence we're at now is the acme of evolution. I think there's a lot more. I think where we're at now is just another claw or a fin. I think there's a lot more evolution to come, and I think it's all going to be here. And it's a connection, it's consciousness, and that might be helped with technology, but I think it's all people still. It's got to be founded in people.
Thank you so much for your bravery and your honesty, George, doing this with us. Big hand.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thanks so much for watching today. And we'll see you next time, I hope. Until weekend.